The real danger in the cockpit isn't turbulence, it's boredom. Sounds counterintuitive, right? You'd think the safest part of a flight is when nothing's happening. But that's exactly when things can go wrong, and here's why. I'm Laura, a private pilot, and I've caught myself drifting mentally during calm cruise more than once. To understand this feeling, I dug into studies and accident reports. Turns out, human factors drive most accidents, and a big part of that comes down to boredom. Well, not specifically boredom. It's a little more complicated than that. There are three terms that explain what's really going on: vigilance decrement, cognitive underload, and complacency. But what do these actually mean? Let's start with vigilance decrement. That's just a fancy way of saying the longer nothing happens, the more your brain stops paying attention. Think of a long, empty highway. Nothing changes for miles, so your brain quietly checks out. Next thing you know, you've cruised past their exit. Too late. Damn it. The same happens in the cockpit. Your brain switches to autopilot. When your attention fades, you might miss early signs of icing or overlook your fuel state until it becomes a real problem. I'm guilty of this too. I once slipped into controlled airspace without noticing. My brain just took a little vacation at the wrong time. Nothing happened, but it definitely woke me up. Then there's cognitive underload. We usually talk about mental overload, but you can actually be underloaded too. When your brain isn't getting enough to process, your thinking slows down. Same long and empty highway. Your brain's half asleep at this point. Suddenly a car ahead of you hits the brakes and you respond with, well, a sad little brake tap or a wild steering move so you lose control. In aviation, underload shows up as slower decision making and delayed reactions as well. Worst case scenario, you fail to recognize an approaching stall or react incorrectly. I feel cognitive underload in my landings. They often get worse after long, uneventful flights. When my mind zones out in cruise, my timing and finesse on final approach lag behind just a little. And finally, complacency, the most dangerous one. Complacency is that comfortable, self-satisfied feeling where everything seems fine. It's the mental state of, I've done this 1,000 times and it's always been fine. Back to the highway. Cruise control on, everything feels smooth, so you relax and take a bite of your sandwich. Then suddenly, traffic jam, emergency brake, and your sandwich is now everywhere in the car. Complacency quietly replaces awareness. In aviation, especially with automation, it leads to not monitoring systems closely enough because the airplane's got it. So, well, when I think about it, I actually haven't had a real complacency moment yet. I'm still early in my flying journey, but knowing how subtle it can be keeps me extra alert to it. It blinds you to real risks. Not necessarily dramatic ones, but tiny ones that silently stack up. And those small mistakes, well, they build error chains. And talking of error chains, okay, think of it like driving again. Last time, I promise. A tiny distraction, being bored and checking your phone for a second. Mistake. You're driving a bit too fast, by accident, of course. Another mistake. And finally, you're busy eating your sandwich. Yet another mistake. By themselves, none of these would probably crash your car. But what if all the mistakes add up? And suddenly, bam, everything goes wrong. This is what the Swiss cheese model describes. Every layer is a barrier. Training, procedures, automation, your own vigilance. But each layer has holes, weaknesses, lapses, small mistakes. When the holes in different layers line up, that's when major failures and accidents happen. And now the big question. Why is this so much more dangerous than the accidents during takeoff or landing, which are still statistically more frequent? The answer lies in when these states occur. Vigilance decrement, cognitive underload, and complacency happen most often during cruise, the long, routine part of a flight. A recent analysis from Germany shows that accidents in the cruise phase are significantly correlated with fatal outcomes. The report points out that cruise accidents tend to be more dangerous for obvious reasons: higher speeds, longer reaction times, and more time until help can arrive. So yes, it's not the dramatic moments at takeoff or landing that are our biggest threat. It's the boring, routine stretches of flight when your brain slowly checks out and where boredom can literally kill. So, what's the takeaway? Boredom itself isn't the killer, it's what boredom does to your brain. Your attention drops, your reaction time slows, you notice changes later. You question things less, and you interrupt error chains later, if at all. Pilots get into trouble not because something huge happens out of nowhere, but because small, quiet things go unnoticed for too long. Routine kills awareness. Complacency kills safety. And this applies to everyday life too, at work, in relationships, in personal growth. Accidents happen, you stop learning and improving. You take people for granted or ignore reality. It's the boring routine where things quietly go wrong. So stay engaged, pay attention, double check, and don't cruise on autopilot. Thanks for sticking around until the end. My name is Laura. I break down my own flights and share the lessons I learned along the way. So click here for more and hit subscribe to join me on the journey.